Strength is an interesting concept for us as activists. We might each have different definitions of strength. So let's talk about it. Already, Tanya had mentioned, like, I will maybe take some notes, as we go along. Already we have like some kind of buckets here where there's the kind of physical element and there's also a mental element. Yeah, but does anybody want to start it off with some thoughts about what is strength? How do we define strength?
Yeah, I can share one thing. Why I would define strength is that kind of the base for it, to me, is something like being healthy, or like taking care of myself. But then the strength is maybe not in all cases, but could be going a little beyond this, or like making something productive out of this health, which I'm not completely sure if I 100% agree with that, but I think that the like base for strength could be health.
Yeah, Leah?
Yeah, sorry. I think for me it has to do with like an awareness around my capabilities or my qualities and skills, but also maybe including like that the awareness includes also the boundaries or the things that I'm maybe not capable of reaching yet.
I would say that for activists, it really has to do with regulating your emotions and managing your thoughts in a way that you behave very positive, no matter what circumstances you might face. So yeah, this is what I think it has to do.
If my notes, I don't know, somebody has some weird sound going on.
Oprørende udviklingsting for at lave, så bare går helvede til.
Okay, I muted must. Maybe the speaking order, guys, because I can't see all the faces just right off the bat. Just go ahead if you're number one on the list.
I'm also not sure of the speaking order anymore, I think, because I also can't see, but I'll give it a try. So for me, it's strength is also related to endurance and resilience. And at the same time, I'm wondering, I always get a little bit annoyed when we talk about robustness. I think a better word is maybe flexibility, so that you're also flexible enough to withstand when things don't, or when there's high pressure.
Yes, I think strength reminds me of resilience, because I want more strength, and I think the mental and the physical kind of belongs together. I want more strength to be able to do what I want to do, but also to be able to reject what is too much. And then from having an old mother I think strength is also something to carry into older age, because we are living for many years and we need strength to live so many years. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's also a collective dimension to strength, to not only see it on like your individual level, but to see it like maybe manifested in all the connections that you have to other people, or like that you can trust in others to support you. Yeah, and I think in an activist context, at least, that's also really important to like have this feeling of interconnectedness and support, which makes you, it gives you this empowered feeling of not being in this alone.
Yeah, I can really chime into that that social layer. There's no qualities that exists in and of themselves. There is only, everything is in relationship, and any individual strength is obviously building or growing from roots that are inside myself, where we have the Viktor Frankl thing here. I don't know if you know this Viktor Frankl quote. It's a very beautiful quote from his book about Auschwitz, where he says that it's really man's or humans, women's only freedom is to choose your attitude regardless of the circumstances you find yourself in. So that part can sound very individualistic. At the same time, there's a lot of power in that locus of that I am an individual, and I can find strength in myself. But the roots that Leah is talking about are obviously also social, and there will be no individual strength if I have not been nourished by my mother and by my friends and by my community. Yeah, I think that's a great thing to have in here, because I started only with the mental and physical buckets, but of course the social layer is beneath that, around that. Did you have something, Tanya?
It has already. It has been said already.
Yeah. And so resilience and robustness, some of these qualities, also being flexible, is also something that happens on group level, organizational level. Maybe it would be fun to give an example of a kind of an activist example from your life where you have been strong as an individual, and or where you have been strong as part of a group or organization. You don't have to give examples of both, maybe just if something comes to mind. I think it could be interesting to look at some examples of strength on these different layers, if anything comes to mind. Wiebke?
Yeah, the first thing I'm thinking about is when it comes to groups, I think every group that works on something that kind of requires a little more time, that kind of intensely works on something together. I think in these groups, it happens quite quickly that that some issues come out very flexible or spontaneous, and always kind of discuss together what is the next step, how do we react to this situation. And to get a little more concrete, like one time I was in such a situation, was in the climate camp 2019 in Berlin, where I was part of the planning team, and we had an organization group of maybe 15 people, And one of our members actually had some like issues, and that kind of was something we had to concern ourselves with the whole day. And it was like a lot of back and forth, but then in the end we decided some things that looking back might have not been good or bad. Like, I think that doesn't really matter, but like this like process of seeing together, how do we move on, what are the next steps, kind of also supporting each other, because it was emotionally kind of very draining for us as well. Individual choices. I think that kind of showed the strength of that group. Yeah.
Something I might share, it's not quite related, but I think we can all relate to group dynamics that can kind of go wrong, and then as an individual you kind of suffer in the context of the group somehow, or just overexert yourself. And a teacher of mine has talked about how it would be nice to organize our work in the style of our play. So he went through this example of like, how did you play as a child? Were you more into group things? Were you more alone when you played? What kind of things did you do? And when I went through that exercise, I found out like, wow, I'm really like, I love to play alone or with maybe 1 or 2 people. And so maybe I can use that to set up groups that make me strong, which could be a little bit smaller. Yeah, because some people do prefer to be more on their own kind of lone wolf style or scout style. Other people prefer to be on the rank side by side with others. Anyway, I was just thinking about that. So maybe it's an open idea that maybe we should organize our activism also according to our own style of play, to get this kind of natural motivation or maybe strength. Yeah, I'm liking where this is going. Does anything else come to mind? We have this another, like, please share more stories. And I did kind of prepare this. The person who requested this theme of strength talked about the potential dark side of strength. We could also talk about that perhaps. Anyway, take it exactly where you would like it to go. Marianne?
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe it relates a little bit to the dark side. It's when you immerse yourself in an activity that lasts like for a long time. Like I don't know. I've been to quite a few climate conferences, and you spend like 3 weeks working a lot in a group, and the energy of the group sort of keeps you together and keeps you running. But then when you get home, you realize that you've overdone it and you're actually completely drained. So that is a little bit for me the dark side. I mean, it's the group dynamic can like carry you along, but then sometimes you miss that your personal own boundary.
I don't know who came first, Eleftheria or Lea?
Sorry, yeah, you go.
I would say that in the dark side, there could be some sort of burnout, because activists are not machines. They have a lot of emotions. They have their personal life. And maybe in their activist life, things are going great. They have an amazing group that carries itself. But something might happen to their personal life that makes things a bit pressuring. So burnout, and yeah, it can always happen, and we need good regenerative practices that can help us on an individual level. That was what I wanted to say.
I'm also going to add to the more dark side of it, and to the like very masculine culture of strength also that sometimes dominates in certain situations, at least also in an activist context, of, let's say, civil disobedience, where people get pushed to do things that are maybe beyond what they feel comfortable doing, or taking a risk level that is higher than you would usually go, because you're like pushed in that moment, like by, I don't know, like this performance pressure, or by like a hero culture where only the ones that are in the front line feel that they get recognition as in their activist roles, for example, and that the ones that are more behind the scenes are not so visible, and therefore, yeah, it creates maybe a dynamic that is also unhealthy.
That, yeah, for me, that really reminds me of yesterday. I was listening to Kate Raworth on the Your Undivided Attention podcast. Amazing podcast. I highly recommend it. And she put a lot of emphasis in that context on the unpaid care work economy, like feminist economy, which I just saw a link in my mind right now between the hero culture, rewarding the frontline people who are kind of doing the visible work somehow, or earning the money, like classically the male the man in the family in the 1950s or whatever, earning the money. But really, she talked about how the man is classically in the productive economy, or the hero is doing something productive, on the front line. But then classically the woman is invisible, doing reproductive work, unpaid, and is doing a lot of these, like the social layer, building humans from the ground up, babies and food and rest, so that the frontline person can actually show up and be a frontline hero. And I just thought about, when you said the word visible or invisible, I think that kind of matched somehow, because like who are rewarded, and it's very tempting to just put your eyeball on the frontline people and not look at all the groups that are somehow underneath that person. The same thing actually goes for all kinds of athlete people, all athletics or elite performers, musicians. It takes a whole tribe or family to build that one person up, that they can spend all their lives just doing that one thing. So I think it's a very nice thing to have an appreciation for the invisible support systems that are the roots of strength.
I have a small addition to that, if no one else had their hand up, I'm not sure. Okay. Because I think this does not only apply to actions, but also to like the background and working group work that we do. I think that there's this, of course, we don't work much with praise, but I think, and I'm definitely feeling it, I don't know if I guess a lot of people could relate that are active in XR, is that there's this underlying pressure to kind of do something. This is always there, and I think a lot of us feel a lot of like responsibility to contribute and to do a lot, put a lot of work into XR, do a lot of APs and so on and so on, when actually sometimes this could go over your boundaries, which we've also talked about before. Yeah, so I think this is where it can also be observed in XR.
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, I found that a really interesting thought, because it's also like, when do we allow ourselves to rest? And maybe it makes me think of the exercise we did at the beginning, with the no rest. And that's what it sometimes feels like a little bit, when do we allow ourselves to actually rest and not contribute and not do new things, and being in this doing mode all the time, instead of in the being mode. Yeah, I like that.
To the direct kind of physical exercise that we were just doing, you know, I think because there was rest in between the rounds, and so the exercise in a way is a lesson in being very aware when you're working and when you're resting, and being aware when you're being strong and when you are resting so that you can be strong. Because just as a very like kind of not fitness thing, but as a training thing, when people are normally training their bodies, they're taking a lot of rest, maybe unaware of it. And maybe they're working really hard even when they are supposedly resting. You know, people carry chronic tension and are not able to let it go. And at the same time, when people are asked to do 100 squats in some random workout, then a lot of the time they will be standing and taking a breath because they're putting in rest because they need it. And so that's very interesting that we can be very unaware of when we are actually working or exerting our strength, or when we are resting or building our strength. And I think, you know, physical training is a great way to increase that awareness, for one thing. Yeah. Wow, such an interesting discussion. Like really, I think a lot of these things that we talked about up here, they could go into the bright side. You know, I think what we talked about with stress, the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic system of how, you know, we have this a mode where we build strength, where we get more energy. Then we have another system or mode where we are using energy, and having a balance in between those is totally necessary on the individual layer to be strong. And then on the social layer, yeah, there is no strength without, or there's no strength in a lonely person or in a depressed person or in a burned out person. Eleftheria?
Or to a person who doesn't have self-love, sort of. Because I think in order to love your fellow activists, in order to have some sort of love for your community, you need to start from yourself and see what might make you not love yourself in a way, how this is rooted. So I think everything needs to start from self-love.
So many ideas about, I just had an idea actually about the again, that donut economics. I don't know if you guys have read that book, but Kate Raworth, I just thought about, who was it that said responsibility to contribute? As an activist, you could say the golden zone where you want to be is that, you know, you began your journey as an activist because you recognize somehow that you had responsibility to contribute, right? So then that would be the kind of the bottom or the inside of the donut. That would be like, yeah, you're here and you should do something about the massive problem, right? But then the outer limit of that responsibility should be some kind of self-care, or, you know, boundaries, limits, self-love. Yeah, I was just thinking about that we need to, you know, boundaries of self-care, you could call it that. I don't know, it's not in the donut model, it's a bit you could say it's the same like that. I don't know, maybe it could be flipped in a way, but yeah, I just thought of how we want to be in that sweet spot, and in a group context. I like Marianne's point that a group can actually, you know, on the short term really kickstart everybody's responsibility and push everybody to do something, but the group constellation can take individuals way over their own boundaries, right? And I think it's amazing the kind of work going on in XR with empathy circles, and just in general. Obviously burnout is like this, you know, fearful concept that everybody wants to avoid, and it's really important, and it's obviously the shadow side of activist work. Yeah, and it's, even though we carry this burden of responsibility, then it's not really an excuse to overexert yourself and then be forced to retreat in complete self-care for a while if you get burned out. Yeah, with the battery, yeah, I get it. What time is it even? I haven't been checking the time. We've used way too much time, probably.
There are like 2 more minutes left.
2 more minutes. Right. Okay. Any final notes on this?
I actually have a comment on the self-care concept, which I really endorse as well. But there's also like an organizational or systems sort of layer around that. You know, whatever context we are in also has to facilitate zones of self-care. It's not only like yourself being, I mean, you of course also have responsibility for your self-care, but also the organization you are in or the context you are in should support you in doing that.
Yeah, on an individual layer, you can talk about like there's self-care or health behavior, which is what you can observe what one person is doing, right? But why and how is a person taking care of themselves? You know, what I'm hearing you say is the context is so important, right? And so we shouldn't put the responsibility for self-care is not on the individual entirely, right? That would be dangerous or a bit unfair, I think. Yeah, I totally agree, because yeah, we cannot be strong alone. So we have some interesting notes. I'll make this available along with the video to those who couldn't be here to join in on the talk. If anything more comes up, let's just continue this as a discussion in our own groups and contexts, being strong. Yeah, I certainly learned something. I'm happy we did it openly. You know, down here I have some different strength definitions from the dictionary. I have a little quote from a really favorite book of mine called Finite and Infinite Games, where he contrasts strength with power. Let's just leave it at this for now. You can look in the document if you're curious, or maybe even add to it. I could make it open like that. So if nothing else, should I end it here?